I have decided here late in my career, Greg Cote, because you've got to keep up with the kids, with the TikTokers. You were complaining during the break after Stugotz's top 5 list. You were saying that Jimmy Butler, hey, you're 33, TikTok, right. TikTok.
Love it.
I have decided late in my career, TikTok, that the way that I'm going to compete with the TikTokers is just to be more wrong than I've ever been about things, more...
Oh, so Cowherd's doing this.
Cowherd is doing some of this, but I'm going to do more of it, and I'm going to expand it outside of sports.
But Colin's trying to be right. I mean,
so am I.
He's just trying to get impressions, and has been for 15 years.
I'm just getting it wrong consistently because, and go ahead and play some imaging for us here.
You're wrong, 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 wrong.
Yesterday, for example, and I'm sure we can do this every day. In fact, we should have like an ombudsman do this to me every day. Yesterday, I was talking about Al Davis and him going after Mortensen, and I used the phrase microfiche, and it's not microfiche.
what is it?
Microfiche is something that I used when I was in college. I looked up old newspaper clippings, and it was before Nexus. It was before the internet.
It was before everything.
It was before everything. Yes, it might as well have been stone tablets, but it wasn't. It wasn't what Al Davis was using, which is a film projector.
Yeah, it was an overhead projector, which I hadn't seen for 10 years.
That's right.
And I literally haven't seen since.
That's correct. And I saw it in college. It's how professors taught in college. But when I said microfiche, that's a totally different thing. That's something I used in the library.
You're wrong, wrong.
So every day we need somebody to seize on the thing that I've gotten wrong because Lord knows. Yeah, it's happening every single day.
If I may, I don't know how many other opportunities I'll get, and I missed yesterday's show where you guys paid homage to Chris Mortensen. I just wanted to say, rest in peace. That guy battled for so long, went through absolute hell to just secure more precious time. And Mort has been with us, was with us since day one. I know you hit all those notes. My relationship with Mort developed over time to the point that we got to be friends, and he was an A1 listener of our show. And one of my favorite experiences would be whenever we got in trouble at ESPN. I wasn't having a great time with that, but I knew we were doing something right whenever Mort would hit me up privately with either a phone call or a text, just loving that we got in trouble. And he wouldn't really rub anybody as quite the rebel, but when it came to our show, he absolutely reveled in that stuff. So I really miss Chris Mortensen. I was really bummed to hear what had happened. I love that man, and he was so great to us. Gave us some credibility in talking sports when we desperately needed some early on. I love Chris Mortensen. Rest in peace.
I have such respect for the old newspaper guys, the Kornheisers, the Mortensens, John Clayton, even somebody like Woody Page, who goes from just old-time print journalism and expands the horizon for everybody who followed. You know, now, if you do what I do for a living, you can't just survive on print journalism anymore. You have to do the podcast thing and be on the air, and that's rooted in the vanguard of those guys, which included Mortensen.
Are you the longest employee the Miami Herald has at present? Is there anyone on the Miami Herald's payroll who has been at the newspaper paid as long as you have been?
No, I don't believe there is. I don't believe there is.
You might have the record.
Weren't you hired at 16?
Yeah, I think Edwin Pope still has the longevity record in terms of overall years, but I might be catching up to him. Yeah, I am a compiler. But yeah, because I think 16 or 17 was my first byline, so that's like crazy.
You're a legend.
Well,
you are.
Yeah.
I mean, back before audio pulled the veil down on everybody, because I used to hold Dan in high regard too. But like, I would seek out your sports opinions.
Well, thank you. But I am a compiler. I admit that. You know, I'm not a big award winner.
No,
Thank God I've made at least a couple of APSE top 10s, or else I really would be a loser. So, but as LeBatard was once kind enough to point out, I finally started making APSE top 10s when the number of columnists was dwindling fast, and now I think there are only 11. So making the top 10's not that great.
You have iconic articles. Everyone makes fun of you about the Marino one, but who could forget David Boston, go get him, or Tony Martin, go get him, or Junior Seau, go get him.
David Boston.
I agreed with him on Boston.
Yeah, I tell you what, I go get everybody. That's the problem.
Right.
You know, it's not my money, I want to spend, man.
Now that we're on the topic of what a legend Greg is, we briefly talked about the Greg Cote Show with Greg Cote earlier, but there was another issue that happened on this week's episode that I want to do right by Greg, and I want to offer an apology of sorts and a peace offering here and an opportunity for Greg, because it turns out that Greg did an interview some time back that he wanted to air on the Greg Cote Show with Greg Cote, and his ingrate son refuses to air it.
We have to have a standard.
So what I'd like to do is I would like to offer Greg the platform of stupidity to air said interview that doesn't seem as though it's going to see the light of day on the Greg Cote Show with Greg Cote.
I'll take it.
You don't even know who it is.
I don't
Standards.
Yeah, I'm still working hard to see. This is all new to me. To me, it's called the Greg Cote Show with Greg Cote. Greg Cote should have the power on what goes on his air, but Mr. EP over here.
You tricked me.
I didn't trick you.
Well, tell Dan what the interview was first.
Or the audience.
Okay. There's a.
I don't need to know.
Okay, he's an offensive guard, so I use the word famous sparingly. But Ed Newman was a really good guard for the Miami Dolphins for a long time.
Ed Newman.
Sold.
For a long time. Okay.
Wait a minute, Jeremy, please look up for me when Ed Newman played. Is it the 70s? Was it 80s
Into
or
the
70s?
80s, into the
Did he
80s.
play into the 1980s?
Yes, his last season was Dan Marino's rookie
Ed-
year.
And the big pitch was this former Dolphin legend is now a judge.
Fascinating.
But I'm telling you, even he came on and was like, "It's not that exciting. I do a lot of DUIs.
He's
Nothing."
a county court judge.
He's just like,
He
it
wasn't a
couldn't be less
Supreme Court
interesting.
justice.
But who was his bailiff?
Nat Moore.
Wow.
His
Done.
former teammate was a bailiff of his. Ed just wrote a book called Warrior Judge. I'd like everybody to consider buying it. And so I interviewed him. And I am bound and determined for that to air in some form on my podcast. If it doesn't, Billy, your stupidity offer is welcome and appreciated.
Okay, well, we have till the end of the day until, we have to do this. Right?
Well, you're on record.
We need an episode.
You're on
I mean,
record as saying that you want Ed Newman. I
Yes.
remember one day here.
EdNewmanBook.com.
I remember one day around here, we did an interview with Vernon Davis that wasn't good enough to air, and Stugotz yelled, "I want it," and Billy said, "Over my dead body," and then I heard it on Stupidity. Can you give me the weight and height of former Dolphins legend offensive lineman Ed Newman, his playing weight and height?
6'2", 245.
Offensive lineman.
An everyman.
Is Derrick Henry bigger? I think he is, yes.
My dad said to me, he's like, "I'm gonna talk to him for a column, so I'm gonna record the conversation. If you like it, we can air it. If not, it'll just be a column." So I'm like, perfect. And then my dad, of course, in the interview is telling him, "Oh, we're airing this. For sure, Ed." Derrick Henry is bigger, 6'3", 247.
I don't think that's Nat Moore with Ed Newman. I don't think that's the bailiff. I think we have erroneous photo up there. I'm pretty sure that's not what Nat Moore looks like.
That's Tony Nathan, I believe, the running back.
Oh, wow.
Another bailiff?
I could be wrong.
Wait a minute. There are two former Dolphins who
How
are-
could this not be great?
That's a good-looking judge right there, Your Honor. I'm bounded in it now more than ever.
Get near the microphone, broadcaster person.
does
Ed
look like
Newman
Tony-
will be on my podcast.
Or mine.
That's right.
I Googled Tony Nathan, and it looks just like him.
Yeah, that's Tony Nathan.
feel like I would have heard if Nat Moore was a bailiff.
Nat Moore looks a lot different than
So-
Tony Nathan
so wait a
and
minute.
his older.
Dad, did you was
Greg, you're the author of Fins at 50. You're a Dolphins historian. You have run off or tried to run off Andy Cohen and Harvey Green as Dolphin historians.
Right.
And you just confused Tony Nathan and Nat Moore, because it's not that they have two bailiffs in Ed Newman's court who are former Miami Dolphins. It's that you got your information wrong. The longest standing journalist in the Miami Herald's history cares not a whit about accuracy.
Sure he does.
And you just confused Nat Moore and Tony
I don't
Nathan.
believe I did. No.
You think
You did.
You think there are two bailiffs? You think Nat Moore and Tony Nathan, former Dolphin skill position players. You believe two of them are bailiffs in Ed
Well,
Newman's?
years ago, keep in mind, we're talking about a bailiff situation probably from the
Are you going to
the
be
90s.
stubborn about this, or are you going to look it up?
I want to look up whether or not I was wrong.
I'm guessing you're probably wrong,
Okay, I don't think
Stugotz.
so.
I mean, there's an
Don't
article.
You think Stugotz said he's probably wrong?
There's an article talking about Ed Newman and Tony Nathan teaming up in the courtroom, so I can't imagine Nat Moore is also a part of that.
He's like a dog with a bone with this.
almost
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah, but you don't know. I mean,
Just give it a chance. Why don't we hear it on
maybe
this
he
show?
was, right.
Okay,
How long
you know
is
what?
it?
It's long. It's like 15 minutes.
No, you don't want to air it.
Wait a minute. No, I do.
I believe I shouldn't be saying this on the air.
We're not on the air.
Okay, I believe Ed Newman told me Nat Moore was his bailiff.
Oh,
Maybe
really?
he
You're
misspoke.
blaming it on him?
No,
Stupidity.
You are blaming it on him.
I'm going to ask Yeti.
I have to do the research. I have to listen
and
to
I
the
thought
tape.
I thought Doc Rivers wasn't accountable.
I got to check the tape.
You are amazing.
Thank you.
And Chris, it must be an exasperation to be married to him, to be a child of his, because he's this stubborn. Like,
And he thinks everything he does is interesting. So he's like, what do you mean? It's a
not
great
really.
interview. And I listened to it, and it's just...
My father, for 50 years, every argument in our home, he ended up not losing because at the end, no matter the facts presented to him, he would just wander away mumbling, I don't know about that. That was his closing dismount.
That's a good one. Yeah, Edwin Pope used to diffuse arguments by saying, you may be right, where you're not admitting someone else is right, but you're saying you may be right.
And not saying you're wrong.
Right, I appreciated that.
wanna-
And if I'm wrong about
You are
mixing
wrong.
up Tony
You
Nathan
are
with
wrong.
Nat Moore,
It's
I-
Ed
100%
Newman's
you're
fault.
wrong.
If you're wrong, it's Ed Newman's fault.
I will apologize.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, unless Ed told me that on the...
Right.
Stop leaning back away from the mic.
Maybe Ed made the mistake. I mean,
You got to trust Ed. I
Right.
mean, he
You
was the
have
one
to.
that
It's
was
his
there.
bailiff,
Yeah,
right.
The
Exactly.
Warrior Judge.
Yeah, why would you distrust judges nowadays?
Whoa, damn.
That's true.
At the county level, they seem fine.
It wasn't even like, if it was a judge and he's doing like murder trials, like this is like, oh wow, I want to like, but he was just like, even he got on and was like, it's not very interesting. It's DUIs, a lot of just boring stuff.
Hey, that's the foundation of our judicial system.
That's
the county
true.
Judge.
This is a flawed approach, especially if it's a good judge, but I don't really research the judges on the ballot, so I just always get rid of the incumbent because I'm like, that's just more time to get corrupt. Yeah.
Why should judges be elected in the first place? That's kind of crazy, right? Who follows judging? Like, who knows? You see 5 names on a ballot of judges. Nobody's heard of any of them. You end up voting
Fair.
for the name you like.
Right,
Hey, I got Myron is my son. I'm going to vote for Myron over here as the judge.
Do we assess them on how they bang the hammer?
gavel.
I wish we
Nah,
could.
it's
The
a hammer.
hammer. If I had a hammer.
He's right.
Gavel.
I said hammer.
I know.
This is a product of aging. Kornheiser does the same thing. I've mentioned this before. It's just seizing on a word and then just having some sort of word association.
Yeah, I love
Tourette's.
that about
If I had
Kornheiser.
a hammer, he
Well,
is
it was
now
Chris's mistake, I
okay,
mean.
how
Yeah.
long ago was that song? Can you look that up for me, please?
I had a hammer. Da, 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 da.
You don't
Ed,
know
Ed
any other-
Gavel's someone I would vote for.
Oh, no
All
doubt.
over this land.
Great judge name.
I'd sing about justice.
1963.
Folk song. Peter, Paul, and Mary? I'm trying to think of who did that.
Written in 1949.
Yeah. I want to say Bob Dylan did a version of that. Not that he would play that in concert.
Not at
because
your
it's
show.
It's a song people actually heard of and could
Because
sing
I
along with.
insist on us being younger and smarter, I'm going to move this conversation away from Ed Newman, 245-pound lineman, and I'm going to move it to a place, Stugotz. I found on my
If you are interested in Ed Newman, Stupidity later today. Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Back to you, Dano.
Or the Greg Cote Show podcast this coming Monday.
Not happening.
I'm about to take control of my own goddamn podcast.
Little bidding
What
war.
I'm about to do.
Bidding war.
It's ridiculous.
Gavel.
I had a hammer. Could you find out who sang that? I want to say Peter, Paul, and Mary, but now I need to know.
They had
It
a
is.
rendition of it,
Okay.
written by Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger. Oh, wow.
Bob's dad.
No. No. Pete Seeger, the father of folk music, I believe.
Yes, he was.
on my phone yesterday, simultaneously, this is what I had happening, and it was both delightful and unrelentingly annoying, where I have Jeremy Taché, Mike Ryan, and Mike Schur, all of them just insane, arguing about what Bill Simmons said about the Miami Heat, where he said heat culture is just lucky. And so I've got that argument going on where I'm thinking to myself, my God, over the 20 years that we've been doing this, there is little that I have experienced that is dumber than fans and people who are have their allegiances to team getting infuriated when person says their team was lucky. I understand that there is luck involved in almost any championship that's won, and I don't think that it's a diminishment of merit that one person over there thinks you're lucky because you won a championship. But Heat fans are starved for the kinds of arguments that they had 2010 through 2014. So if anybody says anything about their team that feels like diminishment, they will grab the disrespect of that. So I have that text string going on my phone, while I also have the text string going on, and this is Mike Ryan involved in both of them, of the Miami Heat saying to me, absolutely not, you will never get Terry Rozier on your show because of what Mike Ryan has said on your show about Terry Rozier. So I've got Mike Ryan annoying me on two fronts because he's on one end arguing on behalf of why
we won't get Terry Rozier. Oh, what has become of us? We are not going to make it. How can the show go on without Terry Rozier? You Jezebel, why are you requesting Terry Rozier?
It wasn't me. I was learning on this text.
Why are we doing that?
It wasn't me.
We speak into microphones. You have insulted me, person.
The other discussion is the one I'm interested in because I'm sure Heat fans would like to hear what you and Jeremy have to say in defense of the Miami Heat, even though I couldn't possibly care less that someone has accused them of being lucky.
Well, Bill didn't even go with the easy one, which is 2006. You can question that championship.
Sure.
Basically, he argues as a fan, and he doesn't hide that, is that Heat culture is really based on luck. To which I say, this very lucky franchise is picked in the top 10 twice. That's impressive in any sport, especially in that one where it's not really common knowledge, but contending windows are pretty short in that sport. Miami's had 2 top 10 picks, and those top 10 picks were Michael Beasley and Justice Winslow. After Michael Beasley went, Russell Westbrook went, Kevin Love went, and almost immediately after Justice Winslow went, Devin Booker went. His whole argument is that Bam fell to number 13. How does Jaquez fall to number 18? I mean, this is the NBA draft. It's a crapshoot once you get that low. And he was just lamenting that Miami's gotten lucky by these guys falling to them. It was just really weird because they've developed players, and better than anybody in the NBA, to the point where you can trade for a Jimmy Butler with zero cap space because you have developed a Josh Richardson as an asset. Take it away, Jeremy.
Well, that part is bizarre in that you're looking at a franchise that's taken all of these undrafted players and second-round picks and turned them into productive role players who get paid elsewhere by other teams, or, like Duncan Robinson, resurge to be an important part of your team. But when you talk about luck, like, the lucky thing is the Celtics being able to trade the corpses of Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and get back a haul of first-round picks. A haul of first-round picks that, by the way, Bill Simmons criticized as a bad trade for the Celtics. And you know what those first-round picks turned into? They turned into Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And you know who wasn't taken ahead of Jason Tatum, who went third in the NBA draft? Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball. That's how Jason Tatum ends up with the Celtics, because other teams don't take him number 1 and number 2 overall. So when you want to talk about who's lucky in the way that they construct their roster, in the way that they get back into championship contention after flailing, after losing their big 3, you might want to talk about the Boston Celtics.
I do think one of the interesting things here is that I have seen in the evolution, whether you want to call it luck or not, before recently, the Heat weren't any good at developing young players. Pat Riley made a total switch over the last 10 years. If they got somebody in the middle rounds, that person was never going to see the court.
Right.
I think, like, in the middle of the first round, I think Tim James was one of the few that they got, one of the highest they got, and he didn't end up playing very much for the Miami Heat. Pat Riley was bad at this for the first half of his career with the Miami Heat.
He didn't trust young guys, didn't trust developing them, didn't have the patience for that, and it was born out of necessity because this team wasn't really great in the trade market. They signed some bad contracts. Again, something very lucky for Miami, I guess. He said finding a trade partner for Hassan Whiteside was lucky. Dog, you had Kevin McHale give you the championship. What?
But I understand why Heat fans get upset. I know it agitates you, but you don't want to be called lucky by Bill Simmons. It suggests that your team is not good. It suggests that Riley and Spo aren't good at developing talent. They're lucky.
Okay, Stugotz.
I think
no, Dan.
Bill-
what you're
Bill's doing
saying
a
is
thing.
what they're saying
Stugotz,
is
how many people think that Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra aren't good? Like,
Yeah,
how
but
how many people actually
That's
think
the
that?
point, Dan. Bill is saying they're lucky they're not good, and that agitates Heat fans. I understand why
This
it would.
was a segment called Hot Take. Like, he was kind of doing a thing.
Yeah, he is doing a thing.
He
and
believes it because he's an irrational fan, but he was kind of doing it with a smile.
I think it speaks to the rivalry, which is one of the better ones certainly in that sport.
For
It's
sure.
just that anytime anyone Celtics adjacent says something, you get fired up. And Miami lives rent-free in Celtics heads because they've been to the championship 7 times since they've existed. One of the crown jewels of the NBA since they were born.
We all just got a text from Mike Scher that said "lucky ass team." Wow. Like right now.
I understand why it happens, Stugotz. I understand why it's viewed as disrespectful. I'm not confused about why it's happening. I just think that Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, not controversial at all, to think them better good than lucky.